Hey everyone, this is Y Ruler of Time. You may be wondering why you can hear me talking but not see me talking. Well, you see, I was about to shoot some footage for this video when my camera fell over and broke, meaning unfortunately today you will not get to gaze upon my devilishly handsome features. Yeah, it sucks when stuff like this happens, but the incredibly bad timing of it all was enough for me to want to KILL EVERYONE! Fortunately, because I am a well-adjusted, mature individual, I restrained myself and am now taking comfort in the therapeutic list of deaths that I have compiled for your enjoyment. Before we get started, I'll explain what a satisfying death is. When you hate a character, absolutely despise them, and think that the only way you'll be happy with their portrayal is if they die horribly, and then they do, that's a satisfying death. It is not satisfying, however, if the author decides to portray them sympathetically, or give them a really long flashback to explain that they weren't really such a bad person, or if their death is quick and completely meaningless. I should also say that this list is very much subjective, considering not everyone will share my hatred of certain characters or my enjoyment of their ends. Also, seeing as this list deals with character death, come on, there's gonna be spoilers. So, before the mental image of my broken camcorder compels me to go on a rampage, let's jump into the 8 most satisfying deaths in manga. Number 8. Shrieker from Bleach. Shrieker the Hollow was basically a monster of the week early on in Bleach, and he's less memorable than even quite a few of the series' other one-off villains. The first handful of stories in Bleach would consist of the arrival of a Hollow, a human soul that had become twisted and evil, and the introduction of a new character. In the end, Ichigo would beat the Hollow, purifying it and sending it to the afterlife. And unlike one of the Hollows that Ichigo faced in the first part of the series, Shrieker never appeared again once he was defeated. So what makes his death so great? Well, to really enjoy a character's death, you have to hate them, and Shrieker makes that all too easy. While he was a living human, Shrieker was a sadistic serial killer. When he attempted to kill a family, a young boy tripped him, causing him to fall to his death. After he returned as a Hollow, rather than simply killing the child in revenge, he put the kid's soul in the body of a parakeet and tricked him into thinking that he could revive the boy's parents. All he had to do was avoid being caught by Shrieker for 3 months. Obviously, Shrieker doesn't have any such power, and he's deliberately allowing the boy to seek out help from charitable souls just so he can kill and eat those that protect the boy. Eventually, Ichigo kills Shrieker in a fairly satisfying beatdown, but it's not Ichigo that provides the real satisfaction to this death, but rather the arrival of the gates of hell. It's explained that being killed by a Soul Reaper will only purify a Hollow of the sins they commit as a Hollow. Because Shrieker was evil as a human, he's going to hell. The monstrous Gate Guardians impale Shrieker through the chest and then vanish, dragging him to hell. It's not particularly gruesome or drawn out, it's more like the public execution of a criminal, exactly the kind of death he deserves. Shrieker, a monster in life and death, can only expect fire and brimstone at their ultimate destination. Number 7. Elder Toguro from Yu Yu Hakusho. Elder Toguro doesn't really measure up to other Yu Yu Hakusho villains when it comes to evil schemes, and he's not even the main villain whenever he appears, that title first belonging to his younger brother in the Dark Tournament saga. But whereas younger Kagura was distinguished by his sense of pride, Elder Kagura was distinguished by being a sadistic asshole. He seemed even more distasteful because of his juxtaposition with his brother, who gets so fed up with him that he kicks Elder Kagura out of the story arc, literally. Besides that, Elder Kagura was creepy beyond measure and just plain indestructible. Later, he briefly appears in the chapter Black Saga. Very briefly. As in for one chapter. Kurama summons a demonic tree called the Sinning Tree during their fight, which causes Elder Toguro to hallucinate that he is constantly fighting Kurama in a never-ending battle. Given some of Elder Toguro's lines, it sounds like the visions are driving him insane, and Kurama explains that the Sinning Tree will keep its grip on its victim until they are dead. But because Elder Toguro is immortal, the Sinning Tree will keep him in its grip literally forever. I'm sort of cheating by putting Elder Toguro on the list, since he doesn't really die, but hey, he's permanently incapacitated, and in a way, he's suffering a fate worse than death. After all, he's guaranteed to spend an eternity trapped in a maddening nightmare, and that sounds close enough to hell for me. Number 6. Nosa from Elfen Lied. You know, sometimes people are just asking for it. When I made this list, I was surprised that I thought of an Elfen Lied character's death, considering how nasty the deaths in that series tend to be and how quickly they stack up. You don't really think to take satisfaction in them. But Nosa's death really appealed to my sense of justice. See, he has command over these psychic Diclonius girls who have got to be, 8 years old? Thanks to an implant in their brains that prevents them from being hostile towards him, the slaves are completely obedient to Nosa's wishes no matter how horrible he is towards them. Up until he goes out with them in an attempt to kill the protagonist Lucy. Instead of following his orders and trying to kill Lucy while she's vulnerable, the children do everything in their power to save Nosa's life when a helicopter is on the verge of crushing him. Nosa takes this as a sign that the children love him, and when he manages to survive the battle along with one of the children, Barbara, he decides to remove the device from her skull. Naturally, Barbara remembers all the horrible things that Nosa has done to her and her kind, and his last feeble apology isn't enough to spare him from having his head telekinetically ripped off. Nosa has only a minor impact in the series, but like I said, this feels like justice to me. Nosa doesn't have a change of heart, he doesn't set Barbara free because it's the right thing to do, he doesn't even do it out of guilt. This isn't an act of kindness, it's an act of curiosity. He basically does it to see what happens, and even half expects her to kill him immediately. It's like if an arsonist set fire to his own house and then got burned to death, he's just asking for it. Oh, what's that? You want to take the little girl to Disneyland? Well, too bad, I still remember the little girls you forced to commit suicide! Nosa, spare the rod, let the resentful child with superpowers decapitate you. Number 5. Azumi Shion from Gantz. Along with Elf and Lead, I mentioned Gantz a bit over a year ago in my 7 Sinful Series video. Now, at the time I had actually stopped reading through it at a point before Azumi died, so let me put it this way. Learning that he was going to die was what made me pick up Gantz again. This guy is scum. Even compared with all the sadists and rapists and other sorts of sickos in the series, Azumi is a monster. See, he used to be part of the Gantz games, in which people that have recently died are given a shot at winning their lives back by fighting against aliens. Before the series setting, Azumi had won his freedom, but because he remembers the pulse-pounding thrills he experienced in the games, he hatches a plan to return to them. The games tend to recruit a bunch of people that have died around the same time, so Azumi figures instead of just committing suicide, he needs to take a whole bunch of people with him. So he disguises himself as a black man, yeah, on top of a whole bunch of other things he's a racist, and goes on a killing spree in the middle of the city. He massacres dozens and injures around 300 people. Then for the cherry on top, he kidnaps Kurono's girlfriend and threatens to kill her unless Kurono can kill him in a showdown. Kurono succeeds, and so Azumi returns to the games, getting exactly what he wanted. But Azumi gets his just desserts through a very gradual process. See, Kurono's been in the games a while by this point. He's seen a lot of his companions killed, so he decides to rally his new teammates to work together to improve their chances of surviving. So the core members of the group survive a lot longer than their predecessors, but Azumi's only looking for thrills, and so he leaves the rest of the group to fend for themselves. Eventually he's hunted down outside of the games by a group of vampires from Blade. Yeah, I know, just roll with it. The other members of the team realize Azumi's in danger, but none of them even bother heading to the scene. One of the characters has even realized it was Azumi who massacred the grand majority of the team and landed them in this situation, and he flat out says that Azumi should die. Disappointingly, he dies trying to save his girlfriend, which is very out of character and besmirches what would otherwise be a perfectly karmic death. But the fact that a team that has spent a large portion of the series looking out for one another all decide that Izumi's just better off dead is great. On top of that, the characters always have the option of reviving Izumi using Gantz's power, but none of them even think about doing so, just because, hey, fuck that guy. Izumi, who knew being a mass murderer could lose you so many friends? Number 4. Hidan from Naruto. Although death would become much more commonplace in Naruto following his defeat, Hidan made a devastating impression on the fandom when he killed Asuma, the first major death in the series in about 4 years, and arguably the most tragic one. On top of this, Hidan was just plain infuriating to watch. He wasn't tough or smart or even fast, he was just plain impossible to kill, even if you cut his head off. On top of that, he was arrogant, rude, crass, and overall a completely unlikable guy. Asuma's students sought out Hidan and his partner Kakuzu almost immediately after their teacher's funeral. Surprisingly, Shikamaru was able to handle Hidan practically single-handedly. He strung him up with explosives and used one of Asuma's own cigarettes to trigger the detonation, blowing Hidan's body apart and leaving his head at the bottom of a pit. True to his nature, Hidan didn't really accept defeat with dignity, vowing to find his way out of the hole and "I'll bite your legs off!" Well, basically, yeah. Of course, this just led to Shikamaru spitting on Hidan's threats and saying that nobody will ever find Hidan and dig him out because only Shikamaru's family is permitted in the area he buries Hidan's head. The best part is that while Hidan isn't dead yet, supplementary materials state that Hidan has to perform a ritual periodically to remain immortal, so unlike El Toguro, he will eventually die. In the meantime, Hidan will be trapped, powerless and in a world of pain. Stripped of his power, his arrogance, and nearly his entire body, Hidan has nothing to look forward to but an agonizingly slow death. Number 3. Envy from Fullmetal Alchemist. Speaking of villains who killed beloved characters, Envy was responsible for the first death of a good character in Fullmetal Alchemist, Maze Hughes. Maze Hughes' murder at Envy's hands is a prime contender for the saddest death in the last 10 years of shonen, so that alone was enough for fans to want Envy's head. It also turns out that Envy sparked the Ishbalan Civil War when he impersonated a soldier and shot a little girl. Throughout the manga, Envy brags about how easy it is for him to trick humans. One of his favorite tactics is to use his shapeshifting powers to take the form of someone his victim loves just before he kills them. But it's actually his inability to fully understand humans that ends up doing him in. He fails to trick both Mustang and Riza when they hunt him down, and doesn't affect his enemies in the slightest when he tries to turn them against each other. The sheer brutality of Envy's defeat leading up to his death is just great. He's riddled with bullets, he's repeatedly set on fire, and in the end he loses all of his power and is reduced to his true worm-like form. After Envy fails to make his captors turn on each other, Edward comes to the realization that Envy doesn't look down on humans, but rather he's jealous of them. He's jealous of their strength, of their ability to carry on through hardships. The observation rings true, and Envy is so ashamed of the truth that he breaks free from Edward's clutch and commits suicide by crushing the Philosopher's Stone that gives him life. Envy's death didn't play out the way I thought it would, and I have to admit it exceeded my expectations in doing so. But while Envy's death by shame was nice to watch, it could have been the top spot on this list if it didn't have a final sympathetic touch to it. Thankfully, no such feeling is spared on the top 2 entries on this list. Number 2. Divine, from Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds. Divine is the leader of an organization called the Arcadia Movement, a place where gifted individuals with special powers called psychic duelists are taught to control their potentially dangerous abilities. A rich man who takes in people with special powers and teaches them to be productive members of society. This guy's just like Professor X but with hair instead of a wheelchair. What could he do to deserve a spot on this list? Well, I mean besides torturing children to test their power and killing any that don't measure up. Yeah, turns out Divine doesn't have a charitable bone in his body. The Arcadia Movement is meant to build an army for his own purposes instead of benefiting the people it takes in. If anyone gets in his way or finds out anything he doesn't want them to know, he kills them. He finds Carly snooping in his office, he throws her out of the building to her death, and she's reborn as an evil Dark Signer. Fortunately, Carly immediately gets her revenge. See you in hell, you sadistic, murdering, kidnapping monster! Well, he wasn't around for long, but I guess it's time to get back to the main plot. Oh, what the hell? He's still alive? You're telling me that Carly falls out of a building onto a pile of wood and she dies, but if Divine falls down the exact same building and then the building collapses on top of him, it's no worse than if he cut himself shaving? After his return, it turns out that one of the children Divine killed, Toby, was the younger brother of Misty, who now wields the power of an earthbound god. Thanks to some trickery by Yusei, Misty learns that Divine caused Toby's death. So, Divine, what have you got to say for yourself?
お前がトビーを殺したのね。それがどうした？お前の弟が無能だったんだ。私の役に立たない人間など必要ないのだよ。
Oh, you son of a bitch! I am gonna fucking. Oh, yes. You're damn right it did. I really don't think I have to explain this. Divine's an inhuman monster. He gets eaten alive. It's friggin' awesome. Divine. Revenge is a dish best served raw. And the number 1 most satisfying death in manga is Yagami Light from Death Note. Let me open this by saying I am obviously not part of the group that sees Light as a hero. Sure, he started off with arguably noble intentions, but you know how they say the road to hell is paved. Heck, Light's morality was shady as early as the first chapter when he said he was going to rule over the world as God, and it didn't take too long for him to go flying past the point of redemption when he started killing off the detectives trying to stop him. Not that Light would ever want to redeem himself, considering he's a sociopath with a god complex, and when he finally is caught, Nier actually intends to just have him locked up. Fortunately, Light tries to kill Nier with a hidden piece of the Death Note, and Matsuda shoots him the fuck up. Even though he survives being shot several times, Light's reduced to writhing on the ground in agony, crying for his followers to help him. And this is where the anime adaptation did something really stupid, because then he got up and ran away. He somehow outran his pursuers for several minutes despite having been shot several times. Not the case in the manga version, wherein Light sees one last chance at escaping and asks the Shinigami Ryuk to kill his captors. Ryuk promptly agrees to use his Death Note, but instead writes Light's name down. As Light simply loses it, Ryuk explains that hey, he never cared about Light, he just found him interesting because of how bold and resourceful he was. Now that he's helpless and nerveless, he's lost interest in him too. And since he has to stick around until Light's dead, Ryuk figures he might as well kill Light himself here and now. Cue the most pathetic display that could possibly have been drawn of Light begging for his life and constantly whining that he doesn't want to die. The smooth, womanizing, prodigal, ever-confident Yagami Light is broken, and it is magnificent. Suddenly he's exposed for what he truly is, an immature child. The villains who have died on this list were all going through various emotions when their lives ended. Some were angry, some were terrified, some even showed a hint of humanity. But Light is the one who falls the furthest. I don't think I can recall a single manga character that has died with less dignity, and man was it great to see this bitch oh, wait, what the? Are you still alive? Stop milking it already! Die, asshole, die! Shut the fuck up! Enjoy your heart attack! Go to hell! Die! 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 Those were the 8 most satisfying deaths in manga. Join me next time, and until then, forget what they taught you in school. Always read right to left.